Well, everyone knows by now, but there's a new War of the Worlds movie out there, and it's bad.
Damn.
I don't know why this happened, but it's pretty much universally agreed that this is awful. Fun awful, at least. You know, I really do love this story, and wanted to talk about it in some fashion. I guess this is the topic. Not only is it bizarre that this movie is so bad, but War of the Worlds has a wild history of weird and awful adaptations. Generally, people think of the two good ones, as you would expect, but oh no, it gets wild. For instance, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the 2005 Spielberg film. That's now 20 years old. Jesus Christ. Well, did you know that there were three different adaptations that came out in 2005 alone? That's unheard of, really. Not only did the other two fall in the shadow of the Juggernaut one, but they also are just, it's fascinating. This whole topic is fascinating. So let's take a look at the history of War of the Worlds on screen. H.G. Wells' novel originally came out in 1898. It follows the first-person perspective of a narrator watching an alien invasion on Earth. There was a wave of invasion stories in this time period with focus on imperialistic themes, which very much rings true in this story. But this was the first to really start the whole aliens from another world invader craze. It's not the first to tell this type of story, but it was the first to do it on this scale. I mean, hell, the book popularized the term Martians. It's a very intelligent piece of literature examining natural selection, Darwinism, colonialism, and of course H.G. Wells' signature fascination with human evolution. But the book is public domain, meaning that anybody can do anything with it. And so there's been countless comics, dramas, movies obviously, video games, and even a very, very popular musical.
And the sky a glowing blue. Red weed covered every scrap of ground, but a gentle breeze kept it swaying, and oh, the sweetness of the air.
But as we examine in this video, just because you can make a movie of something doesn't maybe mean you necessarily should. While it isn't an on-screen adaptation, I should obviously acknowledge the radio play because of what happened. They used to teach this in school. I remember listening to bits of the recording as a kid in class, but I don't think they do that anymore. If you somehow haven't heard the story, it's a doozy. Originally performed on Halloween 1938, the story used to go that people missed the beginning introduction, and so they tuned in the middle of the play thinking it was real, and this caused panic. But historians debate this. What happened was the play was handled like a realistic news report.
Explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving toward the Earth with enormous velocity.
And people listening on their radios really thought aliens were landing in New York City. That's like the equivalent of your parents or grandparents using Facebook and seeing an AI image and believing Jesus is in Colorado or something. Okay, maybe that's a little too harsh of an analogy, given the technical limitations of the time period. Radio was not only a source of entertainment, but also a key source of news, information, and emergency broadcast, such as many believe this to be.
Something's wriggling out of the shadow like a gray snake. Now it's another one. And another. They look like tentacles to me. There, I can see the thing's body. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. The eyes are black and gleam like a serpent. The mouth is V-shaped with saliva dripping from its tremulous lips that seem to quiver and pulsate.
What was really fucked is that CBS was aware halfway through the panic what was happening in the country, but they didn't give a shit. They let the show play until the end. Orson Welles was only 23 at the time and grew to be one of the most famous men in the country due to notoriety, and subsequently was pressed to make Citizen Kane as an apology. You gotta think that this was 1938. People were already incredibly tense with the war going on. You had people calling their friends and neighbors screaming about alien invaders, Earth doomed, and there were reportedly mobs During the confusion, the actors even thought that they were responsible for a death toll in the thousands. Obviously, this was not the case. Many historians, in fact, state that the mass hysteria behind this has been greatly exaggerated. Not to say that people weren't scared shitless. Still, it's a very interesting piece of history, and that radio show is worth listening to. And this whole fiasco will also influence some of the later adaptations we'll be talking about. Now, this is a good movie, so we're not going to spend too much time on it, but it should still be acknowledged. Not only is this film a great adaptation, it's one of the most important films ever made. This may sound like an exaggeration, but the special effects in this movie not only shook the viewers, but inspired generations of effect artists, and I wouldn't call it a stretch to say that this paved the way of modern film visual effects. That was the Academy Award it won, after all. This movie has its cheese, like most of the sci-fi flicks of the time. This was the atomic sci-fi era, after all, but it stands out for how serious the movie looks compared to some of its dialogue. You got people getting fried by heat rays, they even killed a priest, and that's risky in the 50s. Floating manta ray ships instead of the giant tripods because of technical limitations. Regardless, pays off. The film is shot beautifully, excellent use of matte paintings. Oh, and the film is in full color, and it is not afraid to show that off. The laser beams, the glowing of the ships, the meteor, the gray overcast on the frightened, panic dying planet. The sound design is phenomenal as well. Again, the film does suffer from stereotypes of the time. You've got the lead scientist role, the girl companion turned lover, the army, although making for some fun visuals. The Martians are a bit goofy, and the whole duck and cover era really blankets over this, with very, very strong Christian overtones. Yeah, the ending gets a little preachy and American dreamy, but it's still one of the greatest science fiction movies ever made. It pretty much converts the colonialism themes of the book to more contemporary atomic age, Red Scare fear-mongering. But at least this movie didn't cave and have it to where Americans save the day in the end. That definitely would have hurt the message. But it did well to change those themes into a more contemporary state of paranoia, giving it that edge it needed to hit audiences. 1981, The War of the Worlds, Next Century. This film comes from Poland and was banned by their government for a couple of years due to its political statements. That sounds awesome, and the poster art for this movie is insane. I can't wait to see what the Martians look like. Okay, what the fuck are we getting into with this one? So this movie actually doesn't have a lot to do with the book. It's kind of a mixture of War of the Worlds, Animal Farm, 1984, all these literary merit stories. Here we have Martians visiting Earth in 1999, going to Poland in this police state. Everything is less lasers and heat rays and more political control. It's kind of like a darker version of the miniseries V, where aliens pretend to be nice and take over Earth through Nazi strats. This film plays a lot on television, which realistically is a major source of propaganda, especially for Poland in the 70s. So this is actually a good movie. A genius one, in fact. Not one I was in the mindset for. The film's director is known for making apocalyptic science fiction movies. Hell, maybe we'll dedicate a video to that someday. I'd really like to dig deeper into these. But this movie doesn't really qualify as bad, although maybe leaning more towards weird territory. But it is also a very loose adaptation. I'd love to look at this movie again under a different video, but for now, let's move on to something more direct. And although I did want to focus on film, there are quite a lot of TV projects worth looking at, such as the 2-season series War of the Worlds from 1988. Not even my mom remembers this one. That's not a good sign. This was meant to be a continuation of the 1953 film, and for whatever reason, finding this TV series is a bitch and a half. I can't even find the goddamn second season anywhere. Well, I admittedly may be biased to this because I'm a sucker for 1980s television, although this definitely leans more into early 90s. You got the over-the-top action with that.
When did you folks add women to your crews?
Don't tell me you're threatened by a woman soldier.
Oh, no way, ma'am. I just like them is all.
What a nice thing to say.
God, lady!
The first 2 minutes are just explosions after explosions. Anyway, the story of this show retcons quite a bit of the original film, was stating that the aliens didn't die from bacteria of Earth, but rather it put them in stasis and are awakened thanks to a terrorist group called the the People's Liberation.
Of demands beginning with the immediate resignation of the President of the United States.
I love the 80s. You could get away with generic ass villains like these. The aliens also aren't Martians anymore. They're some unique extraterrestrial from another galaxy or something. They have a name I don't remember. I guess Martians were too generic and unbelievable to use at the time.
The 401k.
The aliens kind of sound like Geonosians, don't they? This series lead is Blackwell, played by Jared Martin, Brian De Palma's old roommate, an astrophysicist with an affinity for practical jokes. That is also very much a carbon copy of Dr. Forrester from the original film. This guy's backstory is that his family was killed during the alien attack of the original film. And this is his Scully, played by Linda Mason Green, who I think is trying to be Sigourney Weaver. The whole show is enjoyably cringy. The effects are pretty nifty, and this was all part of the late 80s movement to see how they could push the TV censors. Quite a bit of gore in this, actually. People melting into puddles, eyes getting gouged out, and quite a lot of dark humor also in the writing, even if it is cheesy.
You like it black, I hope?
Yes, Norton, I like it black.
She can stay.
From what I read, they pretty much reworked all of this in the second season because season 1 was too edgy. They took away much of the gore, humor, and watchability, I guess, since it didn't get a third season. They try to add more lore to the aliens, and I personally find this very uninteresting. This is when it leans more into Sci-Fi Channel territory. I don't need to know more about the aliens other than they're hostile, they want our resources, and they want us gone. That's enough to make them scary and threatening. Once you start learning about the councils and the hierarchies, then there's no intimidation. And I get it, it's TV, you gotta fluff things out. And some people actually like having things over-explained, but doing these types of changes runs the big risk of making something a lot less interesting. And comical, unfortunately. If there were a scene in the Spielberg War of the Worlds where Morgan Freeman narration led us to seeing the aliens' councils and politics, there would be a different reception towards that movie. It's not extra lore that's beneficial to the story, it's fluff. It changes the narrative from feeling like something that was well constructed and thought out to a basement gremlins treatment for some sleazy sci-fi bullshit. Now we've got Invasion of the Body Snatchers approach to the aliens type shit. And it also gets weirdly biblical. I guess playing off of the evangelical imagery of the original. All in all, I'm not totally dismissing the series. There's still a lot of charm to this, especially if you're a fan of this type of television. It does have its grittier moments, and not so much, but it was part of a big wave for changing the quality of TV leading into the 1990s, especially for science fiction projects. Just a few years after this, we'll be getting quality stuff like The X-Files. If anything, the idea of the aliens returning to Earth could seem plausible, finding some way to develop an immunity to Earth's bacteria. There's load of playroom, really, to continue this story, and I honestly don't think that this is the worst approach, and it's definitely not the worst item we'll be looking at on this list. It leads more to being just forgettable. And if you do like this type of TV, go ahead and give it a shot. It would be many years until the next major project for War of the Worlds, although it would still be referenced in lots of other media. Then came 2005, where we had 3 War of the Worlds films. The first is H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds, released by indie film studio Pendragon. Oh boy. So this is the first attempt of being a full one-to-one adaptation of the novel, so faithful that it's set during the Victorian era. And I am not opposed to that in the slightest. But something like that takes more than just ambition. It also requires skill. To tell Wells' novel properly will require an incredibly talented team of filmmakers and quite a pretty penny. And this film did have a pretty big budget for an indie movie. 25 million is nothing to scoff at, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. This film was directed by Timothy Hines, who got his start in commercials and cheesy short films. From my research on the also trusty internet, this guy was greenlit to make War of the Worlds before 9/11 happened. And then 9/11 did happen, and the interest of 90s destruction films kind of just disappeared while America was still recovering from a real destructive tragedy. At some point, Hines decided to come back to the project, and also by this point, Spielberg's version was already underway, and Hines supposedly was dead set on outdoing Spielberg. Hines would boast about his effects and his cast that he handpicked from people he personally knew. All of this happening without any trailer or visual update on the project. And then the trailer did drop. Oof. The film didn't turn out as promised, so it lost its theatrical release, turning into a straight-to-DVD project. Needless to say, it did not outdo Spielberg. This is actually one of those cases where the movie is so bad that it's practically unheard of. Honestly, the only reason that the new film with Ice Cube is even getting any attention is because of Ice Cube himself and all of the clips circulating social media. The movie is shit, but still people are watching it out of curiosity. Hines did not have that luxury. This thing is almost 3 hours long? Oh, fuck me, okay.
No one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century that this world was being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Fake accent narration over stock footage and CG. You know, that 25 million really could have gone to literally anything else to help benefit this country's economy. Apparently not worth growing a real mustache either.
He was immensely excited at the news.
No way to explain it.
And in the excess of his feelings invited me up to take a turn with him that night.
Yeah, we're gonna need one of these. Not only is the acting and dialogue abysmal in this movie, I can't tell what the fuck is going on in the background. It's like watching burned film stock. It's fascinating actually that the film it takes 10 minutes for the film to get to the action, which is very concerning considering how long the movie actually is.
The top! It looks like it unscrews.
This is hard for me. This is really tough for me because this movie does so well on its own to explain why it's bad. I don't even have to write it out. There's absolutely no vision whatsoever in the cinematography, if you can even call it that. Do something interesting, for God's sake. Do something ambitious. Use a different lens. Have a vision. Literally anything. This is just technically a failure of a film. The editing has no rhythm. The acting is stiff. The writing is flat. And it visually looks like shit. It sounds like piss. And I'd rather get probed by the aliens from Fire in the Sky than have to sit through this crap again. This film is actually the perfect example of why making a one-to-one adaptation doesn't exactly work. You have to know that film and literature are different mediums, different languages, and you have to translate them in order to work in the other medium. The best example of a near one-to-one adaptation is The Exorcist. That's also because it was written as a book first with the intention of being a film. I haven't even seen the damn aliens yet. What the fuck is this? It's incredible, really. It's incredible how kids with no money and an iPhone can do everything that this movie wants to be and far better. And you know what? Even if this script had the proper budget, it would still be boring as sin. I don't even think talented actors could save this. Definitely not with Hines as director, that's for sure. Because a good director can make something interesting from scraps. It doesn't have to be good, but it could be interesting. And this movie is not that. If you do watch this movie on your own, make a drinking game for how many times this dude just starts sprinting. You could do the same for Tom Cruise, I suppose.
I must offer unable transportation. The two of you get on the car.
They have gone to London.
There's no way. There's actually no way. I can't believe that this exists. I can't. You know what? I'll throw the movie a bone. All right, I'll throw the movie a bone. The music isn't that bad. I don't know if this music was stolen or actually composed by somebody, but it's the least awful thing about the movie. It's overblown for sure, but I mean, yeah. What else can I say, man? This movie, it's not even half-baked. It's damn near raw. The CGI not only is atrocious, it does very little to interact with the real world. For God's sake, the water isn't even moving here. And the biggest sin of all, the movie is boring. How do you make War of the Worlds boring? This is how you do it. How about an hour of footage of nothing happening? How about an hour of footage of some guy running around the woods? If I wanted to go watch the Blair Witch Project, I'd turn that on. Not that I really want to. People walking aimlessly, there's no threats, there's no connections for the audience. I mean, how could they? You could barely tell what the hell is going on screen. The only time something remotely interesting happens is at the end of the film. With dollars to donuts, most viewers won't even get that far. I have no shame in calling this a mess because no one likes this movie. The only praise I've ever seen for it is, well, it does the job of adapting the novel. No, it fucking doesn't. It doesn't do its job because it's a failure of a film on every technical level. It doesn't matter if it's a direct adaptation if it isn't even a good fucking movie in the first place. This shit blows and avoid it at all costs. Moving on to the next 2005 War of the Worlds film from the Asylum. They're famous for their low-budget mockbusters, and that's essentially what this is. This is the film that actually got the company going. Not their first film, but the first one to give it a real profit. Conveniently, they were also working on adapting the novel until hearing about Spielberg doing the same. Now, unlike Hines, they actually were going to pull the plug until Blockbuster ordered 100,000 copies. Probably to trick people into renting it thinking it would be the Spielberg version, because that totally didn't happen to me. This movie is also in a contemporary setting following George, played by the 80s film star C. Thomas Howell. What the hell happened? Well, it's not his first time dealing with aliens. After a 2-minute near-static opening sequence, we get nudity right off the bat. Actually, is this the first nudity in the War of the Worlds adaptation?
I think you're incredibly stunning. And yes, I want to have sex a little bit.
Okay, so it's this type of movie. Well, there's already immediately some pros here. The acting is infinitely better than the previous thing we just saw, and visually this looks like a movie. It also helps that the son in the movie is actually C. Thomas Howell's son in real life. A little bit of an actual connection between these two here. You've got the work and family dilemma with the scientist lead character, or work or family, or... It doesn't take long to at least get into the Martian invasion, but well, it looks better than the previous movie.
Stop! Is he dead? Is he dead?
The tripods are less war machine looking and now are more like crabs made out of rocks. Sure doesn't hit the same scale, does it? Well, like the Spielberg movie, this one also plays on terrorism scares, which of course was big for 2005, but yet the CG items here still don't have any real effect on the real world. But at least we can see what's going on this time. You know, for what it's worth, the story does surprisingly adhere by the novel's narrative pretty closely. Besides obvious changes for the time period and character reworking, the basic narrative is followed. Protagonist is separated from his wife, witnesses the Martians' attack as he tries to make his way back to his family, runs into the artilleryman.
Galileo, he was an astronomer like 500 years ago. I know who Galileo was.
The curate.
I was in my den watching The Simpsons when the first demons came. Guilty pleasure.
The brother role, however, is greatly diminished, probably because of the film's runtime. But even still, the film doesn't contain that excitement that War of the Worlds needs. What the fuck is wrong with this soldier?
Just trying to find out if there were any survivors in D.C.
That's Jake Busey. God, he's just as unhinged as his dad. I love it.
In fact, compared to his knowledge and intellect, you are so worthless. You know, I think I might as well just do this.
Most of the acting in this movie sucks, but at least C. Thomas is trying. I guess this is him trying to get back into Hollywood, hoping an agent will watch this and put him into a real movie. What the fuck? We spend the rest of the film with George and his religious dilemmas through the curate role, which is where the movie feels incredibly dragged. There's attempts here to put more focus on the human survival than the alien attack itself, which is good, but it doesn't quite land. There's been a lot of time on the faith section, and then just hightail it to the end, like hyperspeed. All of this happens in like 10 seconds. I feel like I definitely would have disdained this movie greatly if I hadn't seen the Hines film first. It really gives you a different perspective on what is genuinely a shit movie versus something that's bad, but at least watchable. If you like mockbuster, sci-fi channel type movies, you might get a kick out of this one. But it's not nearly as fun as other mockbusters for sure. This film actually takes itself really seriously, and that could be its biggest hindrance actually. Even weirder, this film got a sequel. Yeah, War of the Worlds 2. That's a first. Except for the TV show, but this one actually just straight up calls itself War of the Worlds 2. This title released in 2008 and is actually directed by C. Thomas Howell himself. So the world seems to be struggling to recover after the aliens' attack. I guess they couldn't get their shit together, to the point where a can of food is a gift. That should sum up the drop of quality in this movie, if you can even call it that. Because movies are supposed to have plots and conflict and things like that. I guess points for originality, but everything else falls short. Even the visual style is far less interesting.
Have to have our front line of defense, the fleet,
They look like F-22s.
augmented with their technology.
Jesus Christ. This whole movie is C. Thomas making confused expressions, giving sci-fi jargon in front of a green screen, and lots of close-ups to try and hide that bad green screen. It was really disappointing watching this movie because it seemed like it was starting out as something that could be interesting. But instead, we've just got a cheaper project here with a story that doesn't even really make any sense. If it was just Earth fighting back at Mars through a wormhole, screw it. I'd be down for that, whatever. It sounds like stupid fun, at least, like those shark movies. Instead, we spent a lot of time showing Earth struggling, and yet still able to launch an attack. I don't know. This movie is nothing more than science fiction wannabe action slop. Half the time, I have no idea what's going on, and I'm bored out of my mind looking at this movement on screen that has no meaning. Words are being said, but I don't know why I should care. Especially whatever the hell attempt of a southern accent this is.
To apply substitution ciphers and have a good sense of things, but what we're missing is the key.
Well, you better start working fast.
Why's that?
I think the walkers are back.
Oh, but wait, there's more. No, the Asylum has a whole franchise of War of the Worlds films. None of these have remotely anything to do with the novel anymore. They're loosely connected, I guess. And they aren't really well documented either. Most of these movies are just the same thing. Actors sitting around moaning of dry dialogue until maybe something with aliens happens. There's the War of the Worlds, Alien Conquest, War of the Worlds Annihilation, War of the Worlds Extinction that came out last year. At this point, it's just cheesy alien invasion movies that nobody wants to watch using H.G. Wells' title shamelessly. I can't even do anything individual for all of these because they all suffered from the same suckery. Just don't go near them. Lastly, for 2005 is the last good War of the Worlds project, the Spielberg movie. I would argue that this is probably the most seen one, even compared to the original 1953 film, due to it not being as old or having Spielberg's name attached. And I guess also Tom Cruise. This movie is a fantastic approach at modernizing the classic story for a post 9/11 audience, which we could change the Red Scare themes from the original film to The Martians are the most terrifying in this film out of all of them. Whether we're seeing them in the tripods up close or through footage of them attacking all over the world, which is the most perspective we get on the global attack, and that is perfect. This film works best with us sticking to one protagonist and seeing the attack through his eyes, but also giving us the fear that it's happening everywhere, giving us that impression that there is nowhere safe to run or hide. Subsequently, my biggest issue with this movie is how Tom Cruise is Tom Cruising it. He's supposed to be your average guy, but he still can't help himself from going a little Mission Impossible here. It's not the worst thing in the world, and it's definitely not as awful as Hines having people in the woods for an hour. Most of the film is simply Cruz trying to protect his family, and that's enough for the audience to latch on to. Unlike the narrative of the novel, where the guy is trying to reunite with his wife, this is a divorced dad, now tasked with the responsibility of protecting his kids. Unfortunately, he hasn't been the best dad.
I'll go down and show you guys, teach you how to play some poker. A little 5-card stud, maybe a little blackjack.
I'm allergic to peanut butter.
Since when?
Birth.
But obviously he shows that he loves his family and is going to any extreme to protect them. I'm not sure how many of you know this, but the shithead son, Robbie, is played by Justin Chatwin, who in a few years after this movie will play the live-action Goku. But fun fact, something I only noticed in my previous revisit of this movie, in Robbie's room, you can actually see a figure of Pilaf, and the young daughter is played by Dakota Fanning, who is just incredible. She's the smart one of the lot, but also the youngest, and displays panic and paranoia at the very reasonable situation, still creating extra tension with the already dysfunctional family. The humanity explored in this story is done very well, from seeing how crazy mobs of people will get into survival situations. Carjacking scene pisses me off every time I watch this movie, to the nut jobs thinking that they can reclaim the land. The script was written by David Coep, who wanted to honor the novel, modernize it, and avoid cliches that we've already seen before in Alien films, and that included avoiding seeing the destruction of famous landmarks. Spielberg is known for his work with extraterrestrials, but even he found it interesting that for the first time, he's making a movie about aliens that are purely hostile. This is my favorite design of the tripods, even if they aren't quite the cylinders described in the book. They're large, towering, and they have a horn that used to scare the shit out of me when I was a kid. The first appearance of a tripod in the film is a lengthy sequence showing the mechanical beast rising from underground, typical encounter for Jersey. Without even seeing the alien, we're presented with a detailed episode ripping apart of the streets, with civvies confused and terrified, again playing to those post 9/11 fears. Then the lurking machine rises and starts blasting people away with heat rays, turning them straight into ash. This is definitely the best visual we've seen so far of this happening, and it's not too gory either to affect the film's rating. But it's still horrific enough to run into literal human ashes. The alien's arrival has been reworked to having the machines been placed on Earth however long ago, with the aliens themselves coming in through lightning. Well, it's a pretty neat idea, I suppose. There's loads of great destruction sequences, some of which are given to us in clever means, like the Boeing crash, which plays out like a nightmare. We don't see what's happening, only the destruction directly reaching the characters, the terrifying sounds of the crash, screaming at you. The Boeing was a real retired ship they spent millions on transporting and destroying, as well as building homes around it. I'm not sure if it's still there, but the parts of the Boeing were available to visit for a tour at Universal Studios. This is also one of the rare adaptations to have a version of the Thunderchild sequence, one of the most iconic moments of the book that doesn't really make it to a lot of on-screen versions. Much of the digital effects were handled by George Lucas's team at Industrial Light and Magic. Even still, Spielberg wanted this movie to feel realistic and chose to use blue screen and CGI limitedly. And while this movie is 20 years old, it's still very effective, although the final act does feel kinda stale. Not really huge on seeing the Martians either, the ambiguity was cooler. Now I could spend more time on this movie, but again, this is one of the most popular ones, if not the most popular one, far more well known than others on this list. Got quite a bit of garbage still to siphon through, so let's move on. Well, now we move on to 2012, where there were 3 films again? Christ, alright. First up is not called War of the Worlds, but rather Alien Dawn.
I was driving and all of a sudden, things just started happening.
The meteors contain some form of alien intelligence. What the purpose is?
They're shiny and they're moving and...
Oh god. This is Dollar Store War of the Worlds. I don't know why this is on this list. Apparently it has loose inspiration by the novel. I don't know. Now, I'll do you a favor right now. Don't waste your time with this. Don't even look at it. It's free on YouTube. But don't watch it. It's not even an hour and a half and it still feels like an eternity. This isn't even a movie. It's not. This is a scam. Not a single original idea and all of them butchered in execution. I don't know who this was made for. Was this a student film? Was this somebody's hubris? I couldn't tell you because there's little to no information whatsoever on this film. I'd have more fun getting my tooth drilled in like Mulder than having to watch this shit. Okay, next up is War of the Worlds. True story? From Pendragon? Oh, hell nah. Nah. We're done with them. No, sirree. Well, I guess people like this one more, so maybe they redeemed themselves? Nope. This is a mockumentary meant to look like a real documentary if the Martians had actually attacked Earth. It supposedly took them 3 years to edit this. Well, it's just historical stock footage with footage from the Pendragon movie. Hines thought he could be the next Orson Welles with this. It's not the case. I don't get what people see in this. I also can't find this anywhere else except for Amazon, so I can't really present much footage of it either. Whatever. We're done with Pendragon. And the last movie from 2012 is the only one that's kinda a movie. War of the Worlds Goliath, the first full animated feature. I'm kinda surprised it took this long. Animation would give a lot of opportunities in interweaving the aliens to the 19th century without looking, well, like this. Oh look, they even let the Martians sing the opening song. Well, the opening retells the events of the novel, showing the aliens' preparation and arrival to Earth in 1898. Now you see, this film is actually a sequel to the novel. Ah, shit. This is gonna be one of those animations, isn't it? It's kind of like those shitty Netflix wannabe anime series. Somebody was a fan of steampunk anime and I guess wanted to do War of the Worlds. What was that? The animation varies from looking really good to seeing characters' faces. There's a lot of cut corners here. 2D elements are usually okay, but the 3D ones stick out like a sore thumb. And yet, this is very oddly nostalgic for me. The direction itself isn't so bad, but the lack of style and cheap animation does hurt. This has the quality of a movie you'd get for free for buying a game or something else, and this is like a special or a bonus feature on the side. Here you go, you can have this thing too. It's basically a mecha steampunk cartoon pretending to be anime with characters all built up like fucking walls and eyes that I'm never quite sure where they're looking. The story here is that the surviving humanity of the novel have decided to use the alien technology to advance the early 1900s well ahead of its time. Humans made Ares, a sort of collection of nations across the globe, in response to the Martians' failed attack. Many of them having personal vendettas or PTSD to the previous attack and dedicating themselves to training in specific technology to holy fuck, this is just Attack on Titan. AOT wasn't even animated yet, but the manga was out. I do like historical fictions, and I like playing around with history. Seeing steampunk super soldier Theodore Roosevelt that's pretty awesome. It seems that not even an alternate timeline could stop the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, which, started World War I, basically. But no, the protagonist, Eren Yeager, British guy, is gonna stop the war by saying, "Come on, guys, these politics are stupid. We've gotta team up as humans to fight the Martians."
It's like she's fucking 5!
Everything about this is meant to tickle the excitement of a particular audience, which I'm sure myself I would have loved when I was 12 years old. There's a lot of potential in the story. It pretty much neglects all the themes of the original, but if you only care about it at surface value, there's a lot of playroom here. The alien designs and tripods are great, but the narrative is not much at all. It's predictable and bland. It should have been more ambitious if it were going to go for an alternate history route. I'm sorry, but watching humans use mechas against tripods it's not exciting. It's just not. The best thing about this movie is getting to see Teddy Roosevelt fight against Martians. That is awesome. If you like that awkward animation period of 2012 and over-the-top mecha action steampunk setting, I know I bullied it a little bit, but it's not the worst thing we've seen so far. It's actually one of the most unique entries on this list, but it's not without its flaws. We've got a few years until the next War of the Worlds movie, but we did get some TV projects. That includes The Great Martian War, 1913 through 1917. That's another one of these. It's a fictional documentary retelling the events of an alternate timeline where the Allies in World War I were fighting against Martians. Well, it's handled a little bit better than the Pendragon one, at least. You've got a bunch of actors pretending to be interviewees, talking about nonsense, and the whole thing is edited like a real TV special by the History Channel. Points for realism in that regard, I suppose. I'm just not sure what the audience for this is. It's just like that Thanksgiving episode of South Park with the History Channel. Dead ass. Could you imagine being like an old person or a kid watching this and thinking it was real? That'd be messed up. I guess it's worth checking out if you're bored. Surprisingly, the BBC didn't make a War of the Worlds project until 2019. This is a 3-part miniseries. Theoretically, that's not a bad idea. Miniseries, in essence, are meant to give you movie-like quality with more time than your average film is allowed. Yeah, that could really bring a faithful adaptation. And I'm sure the British wouldn't mess this story up. No way! Well, this is another attempt at being closer to the novel, so I thought, set a few years ahead of the story. Well, the opening of the first episode is very faithful. They opted to make the narrator's wife a character this time, which I don't mind fleshing them out, since this is a visual medium and our audience are supposed to care for these people. Although the leading lady here is acting circles around the guy playing George. Unfortunately, the fleshing out turned more into a soap opera which really bloats the story, like George's previous failed relationship. This does absolutely nothing to what's important in the story. At all. The meteorite crashes, alright, and now it's a spinning orb. Oh hey, Dudley plays the artilleryman in this one. There are good moments here, like the characters watching the next meteor falling, realizing that there's more to come, but there's more bad than good. Make a drinking game for every damn slow-mo in this show. Then goes to Dune. This is supposed to be the result of the Martians' attempt at terraforming. Now the story interweaves from poorly adapted novel events to the Dune sequences in the future. Oh boy, the tripod designs are pretty lame too. They remind me of something else, and I cannot put my finger on it. I've rarely seen such promise in a project fall to absolute dog shit so fast you'll get whiplash. And the ending of the series is, well, a very dimly hopeful one. Oh, and the narrator dies in this one, but his wife and son live on and play a role in restoring Earth back to being habitable again, I suppose. Yeah, the show kind of blows. If you want to make things more interesting or fleshed out, there's a lot of approaches they could have taken George to better connect him with H.G. Wells, some of the mythology. Better yet, why not focus on those same themes if you're going to play with the appropriate era? There's obviously callouts to climate change with Red Earth shit, I get that. Plus the series ends up being so short that the pacing feels rushed with all this new stuff they're trying to throw in, these new messages, and they feel cheap and forced. I'm not totally opposed to this. We've seen adaptations experiment with the aftermath of the initial war. Many of them bring in interesting ideas, but usually those were stories dedicated to continuing with time to commit to those ideas. This did not have that amount of time. I do still believe in the possibility of doing a proper retelling of the Victorian era novel. I think it could be interesting, but seeing attempts like these really make it hard to believe that it could be done well on screen. I mean, at least this one had decent acting and pretty good visuals, but this will definitely piss off fans of Wells' classic. There was yet another series that released in 2019, but instead of being a mini-series, this ran for 3 seasons. Damn, alright. Yeah, well, it's no Falling Skies, that's for sure. Although for a Fox series, it actually looks really decent. Decently acted, well shot, got a nice mundanity with a sense of foreboding in its atmosphere at the beginning, but there is a major issue with this show. If you're looking for War of the Worlds, this is not that. However, on its own merits, it's a solid alien invasion series, except for, spoilers, there's no aliens. This is not about aliens, it's about humans, and time traveling, and black holes. Yeah, this War of the Worlds without any aliens. It's an ambitious sci-fi show, not nearly as awful as I was expecting it to be. From what I read, a lot of people really hated this show, but it's not War of the Worlds. But I also think that I've suffered through so much bad stuff up to this point that I think I've grown a tolerance, actually. Most of the criticism stems from the fact that this is not a good War of the Worlds, and that's true. The first episode is actually pretty good. There seems to be a reoccurring theme here that we have good first episodes. This has definitely been one of the few projects that we've seen to actually have some suspense. Something all of these previous projects were lacking completely. In this version, the alien attack wipes out most of humanity, save from some characters built up to be important who all survive through different circumstances. They keep the alien threat decently hidden, and then it's robo-dogs. Yeah, not your typical approach, this one. Unfortunately, the series doesn't hold up quite as good as it goes along. It starts to feel dragged at times when nothing is really happening. It's a very dark series with a rather bleak ending and an ongoing theme of the inability to escape death. Not really quite what I got out of the Wells book, but sure. The narrative gets real fumbled as it goes along, and it doesn't really feel like they planned it out either, but rather being done on the spot per season, which is not good for this type of TV show. It really seems like they needed to have this whole thing planned out ahead of time. It is best enjoyed looking at it as its own thing. 2023, War of the Worlds, The Attack. Oh boy. I remember briefly seeing an ad for this one on my Fire Stick homepage, in which my girlfriend and I both ripped into how bad this looked. Oh, now I have to watch it. The narrator is now replaced with a bunch of college students, and then the Wells stuff starts to happen. Alright guys, there's an alien in there. A monstrous creature like nothing you've ever seen before. Now go! Action! Good enough.
Kind of creature.
Dr. Stint, I got close to it. And I'm just not sure if it was friendly, that's all I'm saying.
How did we devolve so much as a species? I suppose that's the real horror Wells was warning us about. I will say, this movie does look like it put more work into its VFX. For a low-budget film, you know. Come on, get the cameraman running to the bikes too! This doctor character is one of the worst characters in any of these movies ever made. She spends the whole time bored with her hands in her pockets. This is a very fast film, as nothing really happens in it. The kids eventually meet up with the artilleryman. It really goes nowhere. We don't get the Thunder Child, but we do get a generic camera falls to the ground and gets hit shot. And then they meet up with the curate character, who is just an absolute dickweed in this one. Keeps waving a knife at him. 30 minutes are left in the movie, by the way. Oh my god. When does it start? The rest of the movie is just the kid surviving against raging aliens until the bacteria does what it's supposed to. Yada yada. And then the scientist character returns just to give an exposition, while wondering how soon they'll get their paycheck for this shit. It's a dull script accompanied by bored acting. The tripod designs themselves were kind of novel accurate. This is pretty much what it is, another surface level contemporary adaptation, just lacking all the thrills or tension that the story needs to work. Oh my god, we finally made it. War of the Worlds 2025, directed by Rich Lee, known for making music videos, and starring Ice Cube. Apparently this has been in production since before COVID, but then the pandemic slowed things down. The entire movie is like a Zoom call. Thanks for watching. Oh, I should talk more about it, huh? Well, the creative minds behind this thought it would be like, what if War of the Worlds happened today? How would people react? Well, obviously, this is the TikTok generation, so this is exactly what it would be like. And they say I'm cynical. Such is the case with the true story. They tried to tap that same spark as the Orson Welles play. It really doesn't help that Ice Cube is the star of this film, and that he doesn't want to be there. because you also just can't take him seriously when he does anything.
Oh my God.
Get away from that!
He's talking about the tripod like it's some kind of stray animal on the road. He sounds drunk when he's reading his lines that must have been present to him when they were shooting.
Based on their prioritized destruction of these critical intelligence command centers, my analysis suggests...
I saw this firsthand when I was a PA on a movie that starred Stallone. A movie he did not want to be in, and he was miserable that whole time, and was learning those lines on the spot. That is the exact energy I got watching Ice Cube in this movie.
Oh my God.
It's getting ripped apart universally as it should. It's actually insane how many instances in War of the Worlds that it's agreed with a movie is bad. Even with the worst of these War of the Worlds fans, there is some sort of fan base, albeit not much. The only fans of this movie are those looking for a laugh. Ice Cube has no idea what he's supposed to be looking at or reacting to.
Something is way off. Their size, the amount, all of it. It just doesn't make sense.
All right, that's crazy right there.
He plays a DHS officer who's just jumping different Zoom calls or web browsers with the government, scientists, and his own family. His pregnant daughter is injured, so he has to go jog up and down the stairs to clear his head for a moment, and then he's back. Thankfully, his daughter's boyfriend is a true American hero. That's Roderick right there driving the loaded diaper van. You can't take anything in this movie seriously. Every time a character is on screen, it's always uncomplimentary. It's not just Ice Cube. Look at Roderick here. They also did not get enough footage because throughout the film, they're constantly reusing shots or slowing them down, freezing them, whatever they can do to make them fit the length of the scene. The blue screen is great too. I love how you can see the clipping on Ice Cube. Just to throw this out there, I'm not being harsh, because this was a movie released by Universal, the same studio that gave us the Spielberg version. This is not some indie kid with a dream trying to make a movie. This is a big studio production. Fuck! You know what makes War of the Worlds interesting? Seeing an alien invasion from the perspective of a normal person, watching the average civvy trying to survive an unwinnable situation, watching the destruction from ground level, and learning from other people, and the very few fragments of information spreading. Information is another theme here. There's people that constantly dismiss or disbelieve that there's aliens attacking. They look at the protagonist like he's crazy when he's trying to warn them. I guess, in a sense, this movie tapped into that, but this is the worst possible approach to do that. In fact, that's the whole thing about this movie, is that the aliens are data miners. I'm sorry, I can't. This is just... It's more relatable to the average viewer when you're getting that ground level. Being in the government position isn't as investing, especially when we're just watching everything through other screens. It was cool in the Spielberg version when we saw that moment, when we briefly got that just to see how this was happening all around the world, because they had no way of knowing that. This is the entire movie. We as an audience are disconnected and have no reason to care. It's a chaotic mess. While juggling everything else, Ice Cube also has drama with his son, who turns out to be this anarchist hacker he's been looking for, to absolutely no one's surprise. His son and his team of Discord pals reveal that the villain of the story was Agent Coulson from the Marvel movies. The government knew about the aliens, big surprise. Then they make this revealing YouTube video. This is a real frame. This is an actual frame from the movie. I mean, I guess it kind of works if you're trying to give the impressions of amateurs making a video really fast, but it just looks fucking stupid. The aliens turn out to be data miners and attack all of Dave's Redditors, and then Dave survives. Sadly, his JoJo poster was just a blue screen, but it's okay because now he has a One Punch Man one.
But look here.
Why is it blood inside of a computer
They're
chip?
a hybrid.
The amount of marketing in this movie is wild. Microsoft apps, Tesla, Apple, Amazon, hell, Prime Air drone saves the goddamn day. This is the most high-octane scene of the entire movie. Roderick driving a drone, dodging alien fire. This might be the greatest cinematic achievement of all time. The heroes bribe a poor homeless person with an Amazon gift card. That man just saved humanity for $1,000. The humans defeat the aliens not with germs, but with a man-made computer virus. How clever. Wait, isn't that how the humans won on Independence Day? This is the greatest image of all time. War of the Worlds 2025 might be the worst movie made in the past decade, but it's damn well one of the most entertaining in a while. Wow, there were a lot of movies to talk about. A lot more than I expected. This just goes to show that if something is in the public domain, anyone can make their own spin on a famous story, but they probably shouldn't. For me, the worst was the Pendragon one, with honorable mention to Alien Dawn because that's not a real movie. And same thing with most of the Asylum sequels, they're not real movies either. The Pendragon one was just insufferably boring, and War of the Worlds should never, ever be boring. As for my favorite, I don't know, I think I'm still more keen to the 1950s one because I'm a sucker for the atomic age sci-fi films, and I really like the aesthetic of that movie. I love the effects. Even while it has its cliches, I still think I find a little bit more entertainment from that than the Spielberg one. But I think the Spielberg one does a better job at being scarier in its presentation of the hostile aliens. Narrative issues with that one as well, but the visuals in that film are phenomenal and they still look great today. It's some amazing, amazing imagery. Let me know in the comments below which of these was your favorite and which was your least favorite. Or which did you find the most entertaining. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and check out my socials to keep up with the channel. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.